Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacinio Tweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're doing a live match preview for Arsenal versus Everton, our last game of the season. So, yeah, it's a little bit sad. It's going to be the last match preview that I do for the season. And so, yeah, here we go. Let's do this. Um, There's kind of a lot to talk about just in general, and then I do wanna talk about Arsenal or Arteta's press conference. I think some of the talking points or some of the quotes from there are important to kind of pull from and then discuss, and I have to say, I do feel like there's a little bit of because Arsenal fans are hurt by the way that the season has kind of, um, panned out, and yes, there's still a very, very small chance that Arsenal can still finish in the top 4, but I think because there's such a, disappointment there that there's almost like this, want or desire to stifle any criticism or negativity around Arsenal, and the reality is that, like, we finished too many seasons in this way, and so even though I think a lot of Arsenal fans are on board with the idea that this young team did a good job, they probably did as good as they possibly could in the scenario that they were in. You cannot expect Arsenal fans to not be disappointed and not to express it. And we all interpret the way the season went in a different way, based on what your expectations were from the beginning of the season, the middle of the season, and the end. So I think it's just better if we can have open and honest conversations around how we feel versus like, oh, well, this is what it means. This is how the season went. And anything other than that is not the truth. Everybody has interpreted the season in a different way. So just saying, well, nobody thought that we were going to come anywhere near the top 4. Then we were near it. We just barely missed out. So the season is a success. Don't talk about it. That's just literally not how things work. You know what I mean? So let's just be a little bit more open to other people's opinions because I can't blame anybody who's really, really disappointed about the way that the season has ended or is going to end. Um, when you've been outside of the top 4 for so long, and I don't even think it's like that accepting mediocrity kind of Arteta out bingo card type talk. When you've been outside of the top 4 for so long, being so close to it and then modeling it is painful. And so, yeah, I just think that like there's a lot of this is the truth around the way the season went. I don't want to hear anything negative. That's just not how it is. Like everything about this season was not positive. So, yeah, I think it's okay to have like honest conversations, you know what I mean? Um all right. So, to start off with, let's talk about Saliba. I think that's probably the biggest news coming out today, coming from RMC, that basically, like, Saliba has told Marseille or the management at Marseille that he wants to stay at Marseille. And so, I mean, at this point, I don't know what to even think about this whole Saliba scenario because it's just been such a long kind of saga, and I'm tired of it. Hold on real quick. Give me one. Hold on really quick. Um, I don't really know what to make of it at this point because we've just been talking about it for so long, and it's been 1 minute he wants to stay, 1 minute Arsenal have him in his plans, 1 minute he wants to go, he's upset, he's this, he's that. And without having to go back into the timeline of the entire situation at this point, you know, there has to be some way for Arsenal to even if they like and I don't know the ins and outs. I'm just looking from the outside. Like but there has to be some way to get him to feel like he's wanted at Arsenal, give him a new deal, tell him he's important to the project, and just move forward. Not resolving the situation is why it's continuing to feel like it's in the balance. And I just don't know why Arsenal cannot tie this up and not make it into something huge over the summer if they truly do feel like he's a part of their plans. I feel like if he is a part of the plans, then it should be obvious. He should have a new deal in his hand. He should, at the moment that he, you know, like, it shouldn't be up in the air, and it's still up in the air, and that leads me to believe that maybe Arsenal are not sure about what they wanna do, or maybe he's not sure about what he wants to do, and everything is just confusing. And what I haven't liked about this particular hierarchy is that we seem to be very indecisive, slow to make decisions, and not really clearing up things before it becomes some bullshit. So, with this, I don't even know how to feel about it anymore because when I think it was James McNicholas, this was a couple of months ago, said that he went to go watch Saliba play at Marseille and said that there's not a feeling around Arsenal that he's going to be there next season. They have not offered him a new deal. They have not even spoken to him yet. And that was like maybe a month ago. So we're coming up to the end of the season and you're offering El Neni a new contract, but you haven't even spoken to Saliba. Why not just freaking clear it up? Offer him a new deal and end this madness. The only reason why I think it's still up in the air is because maybe there is no resolution on it. Maybe Arsenal, maybe they don't want him there, or maybe he just doesn't want to come back. But if I'm Saliba at this point, and if I'm being honest, I wouldn't wanna come back, if I'm being honest. From an Arsenal fan perspective, it makes all sense in the world for Saliba to come back to Arsenal, and just fight for a spot with Ben White and Gabriel and be the 3rd center back in that group and just be a part of Arsenal. But if I'm Saliba, I'm not coming back. Marseille, he's starting. I think they made the Champions League, playoffs. He's on track to being like the next center back for the French national team. And when Marseille decide, because if we sell him to Marseille, they'll get him for peanuts because he's not going to sign a new deal. So they'll be able to buy him for 20, 25 to 30 million from us, which is essentially what we paid for him. And then they'll turn around and flip him for 60, 70 million to Real Madrid in a couple of years. So him knowing that, why would he come back to Arsenal to sit on our bench in the Europa League of all competitions? And so for me, it's just I'm tired and I just want it to be what it is. But this is one that I don't really know if Arsenal or the like Arteta, Adu, and the hierarchy are going to be able to survive. A lot of Arsenal fans understood the Aubameyang thing, understood the Ozil thing, understood the Guendouzi thing, but I don't think Saliba has done much wrong, at Arsenal to have his career to have been the way that it is. And as much as I watch Saliba play, and I do think that he makes mistakes like any other young player. I do think he needed loans. I think you only arrive at Arsenal once, and it's okay for him to be getting some much needed experience somewhere else. But did you have to put him in the under 23s? Probably not. That wasn't something that had to happen. That felt like a punishment. And he mentioned that in a recent interview that the being pushed into the under 23s was a very significant moment in his Arsenal experience. And that was something that Mikel Arteta did. And often I do feel like he uses a hammer for every nail. So everybody gets that hard boom, shifted off into the under 23s, isolated from the squad, iced out completely. There's nothing in between. You're either in or you're out. And I feel like, although I can understand the other situations, I don't really understand Saliba. Um, and it's just kind of a really crappy feeling, to be honest. Um, Also, if you have to sell Saliba for whatever little amount that you sell him for, you're not going to be able to find somebody of his quality for the same amount. And going into another summer transfer window where we desperately need to be focusing on midfield and attack and having to rebuy a fullback, rebuy a center back, that's a big chunk of your transfer window budget. Because as we'll get to the press conference, Arteta's comments around how much we're going to have and what we can do with it are not really like, "Oh, we're gonna be fine." It very much looks like another window of, "We gave you 75 million and you have to make up the rest in sales," kinda bullshit. So I'm just kind of like feeling down about the Saliba situation because that could have been a really good opportunity for us to have a third center back of quality rotating with the good center backs that we have now. But if you have to go into and it's just another thing for people to beat us over the head with. I'm like every other fan where I just get tired of Arsenal being talked about as a banter club and a joke. And Saliba will be at Marseille for a couple more years, play really well, get into that French national team side, get picked up by Real Madrid or worse, somebody else in the Premier League, and we're going to have to hear about it for years to come. And it's just freaking tiring. Shaheen says Saliba has a place at Arsenal next season. I believe it's in Saliba's hands if he wants to commit and compete with Gabriel and White. I don't think that he wants to do that. I mean, I have yet to hear Saliba say, "I'm excited to go back to Arsenal. Arsenal is my club. I want to fight for my position." Yet. Now, if you look in contrast to like somebody like Conor Gallagher that was on loan from Chelsea to Crystal Palace, you've never heard him say, "Crystal Palace is my club. This is where I want to be." Um, He's always talked about wanting to go back to Chelsea and having, even though he knows he's gonna be sitting on the bench at Chelsea, he's not gonna be starting games, but he's always talked about going back to Chelsea, and that's where he wants to be, and that's where his career, is at Chelsea. Saliba, in contrast to that, has said Marseille is his club. That's where he wants to be, and has never spoken about coming back to Arsenal in a warm way at all. Everything has always been up in the air. And so it's just kind of like it is what it is. There were reports from La Provence like a couple of weeks ago that Saliba is in Arsenal's plans. But the reality is that a lot of this is in Saliba's hands because if he doesn't want to commit to us, like you've said, Shaheen, then we have to sell. Because you can't let Saliba go for free. We're not like Man City. We can't afford to let our players go for free. So it's not a good situation to be in. I do think it could have been handled differently. Don't think it needs to be like it needed to be this because the guy wasn't ready to play. Like he just wasn't ready to play. He didn't kick your dog. It didn't have to be this serious, but it is what it is. Logic says we had a center half with top potential and went to buy another one instead of getting a midfielder is what it is with Saliba, Arteta sold. Seawalder says there was a completely sourceless comment going around at the time that Saliba had made some unacceptable comments about Arteta's wife. I didn't pay any attention due to lack of source and credibility. Yeah, I didn't see anything about that. If that's true, then I'm not saying that Saliba is completely blameless. Like I've always suspected that there's been maybe something behind the scenes with his maybe something that he said or attitude wise. But at the same time, these are resources that we can't afford to allow to just go away. And up until this point, Arteta's pretty much had carte blanche to get rid of talented players for basically nothing because they did something. And so when you're at Arsenal and you're not at Man City, you just can't afford to ice out players. Like you're not Pep and you can't just get rid of Yaya Toure. That's just not you can't just ice out Leroy Sané. Like, that's not where you're at. And so it's just a track record from Arteta of having players that have maybe done things wrong, have maybe been disrespectful, and don't get it twisted. There are players at every club that don't fall in line. They're not it's not every other club that has all these great players that never fall out of not never fall out of line. It's just about the way that you manage it. And Arteta's pretty much fallen out with a lot of our more talented players. And then it's just they just disappear. We just give them away for free, and then we just never hear about it again. And Saliba, maybe he did say something that was off-putting or just completely, you know, just out of line that Arteta couldn't accept. But equally, he was what, 18, 19 years old. And that doesn't mean that you just get to chuck 27 million down the drain. It's just not it, especially when you're not delivering Champions League football to Arsenal as well. Like, if Arteta was delivering above what's expected, we could probably accept that. But getting rid of Ozil and Aubameyang, Guendouzi, not playing Pepe and not having Saliba hasn't really given us the return that it probably should based on the amount of resources that have just been thrown down the drain. Lynn says, just do you think it's fair to say that Marseille is in the same category? You mean in the same, like, category as us? What do you like, explain a little bit more. Logic says White took the 4 off of Saliba. I think he's good on our club, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, if he backs himself, which I think he does, I don't think he's, like, dying to come back because there's just been too many scenarios. Like you said, they took the 4 off of him. He got dropped into the under 23s. The fact that he continuously talks about that, I think was a very Saliba is one of the and since we bought him, has been one of the most talented young French center backs that there is. And that's saying a lot because they have Upamecano, Konate, Jules Koundé. Like, they have a lot of very talented young defenders. And for Saliba to be in and amongst those names, he knows he's a good player. And when you know you're a good player, sometimes you just say, you know what, it's not worth it. Like, I know I'm good enough to play. This is bullshit. And also, when you have a manager of Arteta's experience, it's also not that easy to convince good players that you know what you're doing. And so I don't really blame Saliba. If I'm Saliba and I'm one of the best young center backs in the world, I don't I've been starting, first team games for a couple years now. I got my big move to Arsenal, and then they dropped me into the under 23s. Yeah, I'm done. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's mentioned it too many times. Lynn says, just there was a program last night about Pep, and there were 12 players that couldn't stand working with him. And these players said he didn't have very good man management skills. Yeah. And if Arteta is basing his man management off of Pep, then he's going to fail because Pep has been at clubs that have unlimited resources, very talented players. So if one or two in that time don't like Pep, it doesn't matter because he has somebody else there on the bench to play. And so I have no doubt in my mind that Leroy Sané can't stand Pep. We know that Yaya Toure can't stand Pep. But when Pep didn't want to play Yaya Toure, he had Sergio Busquets to play. Arteta has, like, I don't know, like, holding. So, yeah, Saliba, I can't see him coming back now. I wanted to believe, but there's just too many things at this point. And it's not just about Saliba and his feelings around Arsenal. It's the contractual situation that he's in. You either have to offer him a new deal or risk losing him for free. And we are not a team that can just let players go for free. We have canceled so many contracts since Arteta's been here, so many contracts, and let a lot of players go just for free. So Saliba is a player that we've spent 27 million or something like that on. You can't just let it go. Like, you know what I mean? So they have to figure out something. And there's just not a lot of warmness on either side that makes me think that I'm it would just it's just gonna be it's not happening. Rico says Everton are staying in the Prem. What a night to remember. Fantastic comeback, great atmosphere. Yeah, great atmosphere until that guy kicked Vieira. That was stupid. Um, Tony says, not going to make this pod, but I'll listen back, going to enjoy the last game no matter. Fair enough. Let's see. Lynn says, I understand what you're saying, Jess. I mean, I can't just say I know he's gonna come back because that's what people want to hear. I know people want to hear just mostly positive that things are gonna, um, just have like, things are just gonna go well and nothing has been done wrong, but Saliba not coming back to Arsenal is a F up. It is. Like, you can justify and contextualize the other ones, but not this one for me. Let's see. Hefty says Saka, Xhaka, Ramsdale, both Gabby's, Odegaard may fall short in matches, but they all have good minutes. And they all love Arteta. I don't think Arteta is the issue. It's a big fish from small ponds that are. Maybe, maybe. And maybe. P. Trim says just management of people is about managing lots of differences. You bring them over to your philosophy. And I think there's just a level of, and this is from me looking from the outside looking in, um, also just putting together the pieces that I have and making a conclusion that may not be right. So I understand that I may not be right, but it feels like Arteta is very black and white, on or off, right or wrong. Like, it's very, you're either here or you're not. And players that exist within the gray area just get pushed out, or just sit there and don't get any playing time or whatever. And so if he just wants all nice boys in this team and guys that just listen to him, then we're always going to have a team full of young players that view Arsenal as a step up and just that's it. But a lot of good players are assholes. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like good players have big personalities and sometimes they fall out with people. And so if he thinks that the only way you can play for Arsenal is by being a nice boy, I mean, we're not going to be able to attract the best players because a lot of the best players are assholes. And that's why you have world-class managers that know how to manage personalities. Like he probably needs to go sit down with Carlo Ancelotti. Ancelotti is probably one of the best man managers in the world. May not have tactics, on lock, but he's somebody that knows how to manage the big personalities when it matters. And he might need to take some courses from him because you can't just only have good boys in your team. You know, some players are going to rate themselves and feel like they should be playing, and they're just not going to freaking listen. Hefty says, I am really high on Saliba. I even move him on FIFA and Football Manager, but I think the club needs to be strong and not be bullied, but a talented by a talented but raw center back. But is it being bullied to give him a new contract, a new deal, and say we really want you here, we value you, and like play him? I don't think it's about being bullied. I don't think Saliba's really. What is he like? I don't know that Saliba's bullying him, but I do also think that there's something else that happened that we're not privy to. Amira question, but he wanted to go back to France when the club wanted to loan him to a Premier League team. If he'd rather stay there than fight for a spot, where does that say about him, about his mentality? Is it an age thing? Yeah, I hear that too, that he needed to probably go to like Newcastle or something like that. I think that's what the club wanted, like Newcastle or Southampton or something like that. And he'd rather stay in France. He wanted to be at Marseille. If he'd rather stay there and fight for his spot, then that's fair enough. You know what I mean? But I think the best managers can convince players that this is the right thing for you. They can convince them that this is the what you should be doing. And if at this point Arteta doesn't have more, you know, power of persuasion, than Sampaoli and Marseille, then fair enough. But I just feel like, Saliba probably has strong ideas about what's best for him and all this kind of stuff. If we can't convince him at this point that our Arsenal is where he should be, then I think that says more about us and Arsenal's attractiveness than Saliba. At this point, he's a French center back. He signed a big deal to come to Arsenal, and you can't convince him to come back. I think that says more about us than about him. Um, Shaheen says Ball is fully in our corner. He will return next season. He just needs to gel to the squad. Then he will integrate and shine. Fair enough. So moving on, let's go ahead and talk about Arteta's press conference. Let's pull this up here. He spoke a lot. So let's do this. Let's pull kind of some of the bigger quotes here. So this is Arteta on how he rates the chances of still finishing in fourth. He says it's very possible. And looking back, I've been back a few years and seen a few examples of teams that have played in the last game of the season and things have happened. The closer the game is, I am more hopeful. He kind of has to say that. He has to say that there's still a chance, because if he doesn't, then the players will come out there and act like they're on the beach. I think we are all kind of in the same mind frame that there is a small chance, but it's very, very unlikely that Spurs go. They're at home, I think, as well, playing Norwich. Let's see. Let me make sure I'm getting the right information here. Okay, so they're going away to Norwich, but for me, it's very unlikely that Spurs go to Norwich and shit the bed. Even if they draw and we win, they'll still go through on goal differential because we've been terrible. So, in scoring goals. So it's kind of like at this point, we need a miracle because we still have to win our game. I see a lot of Arsenal fans really focused on Norwich and Tottenham being bottlers and all this kind of stuff, but Arsenal have not been able to get out of ruts quick. That's the reason why we lost to Newcastle, was because we lost to Spurs. So Everton will be maybe on the beach and maybe a little bit drunk and hungover because they're safe now, but they also might just play with freedom, and happiness because they've done so well to get out of the relegation zone. So I'm more concerned about what Arsenal are going to do than anything else. And I have heard the little rumors or whatever of some Tottenham players being ill from potential food poisoning and this kind of stuff. But I feel like if somebody came out and said it was a hoax, I wouldn't be surprised. If it's a couple of players, it won't be the players that matter. It won't be Kane or Son. They'll play. It'll be gut wrenching when the Arsenal fans that are believing this see the lineup for Spurs and it's their full strength regular lineup. I don't believe anybody's ill in the Spurs camp. And if they are, they'll be well enough to play on Sunday. So those are my thoughts on the whole Spurs players being ill. But he has to say that there's hope so that the players don't embarrass themselves at home at the Emirates. So I don't think Arteta actually is sitting there thinking that there's a really good chance. We all know what the chance was, and that was against Newcastle. On whether fifth place would be progress, he said it is because we have created expectations that this club deserves and where this club has to be. And in the last 2 months, we haven't been able to fulfill those expectations. But overall, looking back where we were, you have to be clear as well with what we have to do. but very clear that this is not where we want to be, that we want to be in a completely different position, challenging really for the top teams, and that's the aim, that this is not going to stop here. That is another step that was very necessary because it wasn't only about where we were in the league table. We have had much deeper issues at the club than the league table, in my opinion. Now they have been resolved. Now they look very, very strong, and that we have a real strong foundations now to build what we want to do. So Arteta's talking a lot about soft factory stuff. A lot of this interview or this press conference, his answers were very much so directed away from what we did on the pitch to the culture, the foundations, the way it feels around the club, everybody working together and all this kind of stuff. I want to ask you guys, do you think that we have the foundation necessary to push on from here? What do you think about this idea that we've done what we needed to do, to kind of like what we needed to do is more important than the league table? Because I feel like overall, with the board and Arteta and what people are kind of saying around Arsenal, that this was more of like a reset year. There wasn't very high expectations around where we were going to finish, and it was just about the culture part and building the foundations, and also probably getting rid of some players that didn't fit that. What do you guys think? Kville says, just honestly, I'm now so well prepared for Europa, and we'll actually be traveling with the away support to wherever needed. We are supporters, not fans, and it doesn't matter if it's Europa League or Champions League, we are there. Um, C. Walder says either Arteta is fed up with Saliba, or Saliba is genuinely a bad apple. Until we know for sure, I am reserving judgment on both of them, but there's no talk about his character from Marseille. No, they love him. But yeah, you guys, what do you guys feel about the idea that we've kind of built the foundation, and this year was a reset year, and it was more about the culture and all that kind of stuff, and that has been fixed? Because that's basically what I'm reading here, is that the culture has been fixed, and now we've progressed, and it was more about that stuff than the actual league table. Because that's basically what he's saying. Um, for me, you guys know how I feel about the culture conversations and leaning into that too far. I think they've done a good enough job getting fans on board with this current group, and fans are more excited to go to the Emirates. You can tell that fans are genuinely excited about this young group, but at some point it does need to be about the wins, getting up the table, and they're saying that that's not what this season was about. Every season for Arsenal Football Club is about what happens on the table, as far as I'm concerned. So, and maybe not focusing on what happened in the table is the reason why we didn't get into the top 4. I don't think the project is so stringent that we couldn't have made some sort of signing in January to bolster us into the top 4. And every season that we finish in the Europa League or outside of it, the conversation around the transfer window is very much like we have to do with what we got and all this kind of stuff. So maybe a push in real time in the present would give you a better foundation for this future you guys keep talking about. Um, got to focus on the present at some point. But I kind of hear this. I feel like he's only going to get one season of this where he can talk to us about soft factors and culture and this kind of stuff. Next season, fans are going to want to see progression. They're going to want to see wins, deep runs into cups and stuff like that. So even though I can kind of see this and understand where he's coming from, I do think that this will wear thin at some point. Yo-Yo says Arteta's development and the squad development must be assessed separately, not interested in how they want to control the narrative. Why this Amazon doc will be painful to watch. Lynn says, but the Cronkies have now got to give Arteta the funds to get a solid platform because any good business is run like this, not in shoestring. But and we'll get into it. But the comments around the transfer budget and the confidence around the window is not really resonating from Arteta the way that I feel like it should. If this was all a part of the plan to finish in Europa League and, you know, and do the reset, then they still need to spend the money. And so the idea that, we need to just do with what we got and try to make things work, that's not the talk that was coming out a couple weeks ago when we were in the driving seat for the Champions League. When we were in the driving seat for the Champions League, it was one or two big players. We're going to go big. This window is going to be this, it's going to be that. Now that we're going to finish in Europa League, it's we got to do with what we got and try to make things work. If this was always the plan, then why has the narrative changed around the window now? Or it feels like the temperature around the window has changed. Um, like what's going on here? Let's see. Carl says, maybe I'm just feeling sanguine, but it does feel like we performed as well as possible with the squad that we had. Olivier says, yes, top 6 and start building a team for this year, top 4 next year. If you lose Saka, then maybe more. Let's see. Oh my, hold on. I'll get to that question in a second. Billy says, how much do you think we need to spend? It's not so for me, it's not so much about how much we need to spend. I just think the window that we need to have is the same regardless to if we finish in the top 4 in Europa League. Because ultimately next season we need to have a team that can be a Champions League level team to either stay in it or to get it next season. You can't have a Europa League level squad next season and expect to qualify for the Champions League through the league or to win the Europa League. So for me, I don't see how the narrative of the window would change between the two because it doesn't matter. The job is still the same. This squad is not good enough. And had we had made it into the top 4, it would have been like an overachievement based on the squad that we have. So for me, it's about not how much we spend, but in some way, shape, or form, they need to be able to address both fullback positions, now potentially center back if they lose Saliba. And when I say like the backups need to be able to start, so that means you can't bring in a 6 million pound, Tavares. You need to do better than that. You need backup for Thomas Partey. You need some sort of left 8, and you need at least 2 attackers. So you need at least 6 players to come in. So the spending for me is not because I think a good club with good recruitment could find better players than we do with less money. I think our recruitment is very average. So they need to figure that out. For me, it's not about we need to be spending 250 million. For me, it's about addressing those positions with quality. You need 6 players minimum. So that's more what I'm thinking about versus spending. But I don't think we can't spend anything less than 150 million, really. Let's see. Yo-Yo says Conte is on the verge of taking a conference league squad into the Champions League. It's levels. Fair enough. Lynn says, how wisely is how the funds are spent? How wisely is how the funds are spent. However, for me, we need a better scout who can find gems. And that's kind of where I'm at as well. I'm not really if we have good recruitment, 150 million could be really significant. But because I don't think we actually have good recruitment, 150 million may not go a long way. So yeah. I think we're hit and miss. That's what I'm saying. I do think we've made some good signings like Odegaard and Gabriel. I think those have been pretty much value for money so far. But I also think we're hit and miss. I really do. So there you go. Amira says, could you see this team winning the Europa League next season? Personally, I'd rather see us win that than compete in the Champions League just to see how far we can go. A trophy could do wonders for their confidence. Um, this team I can't see winning the Europa League. This team as it stands, because now the bad Champions League teams, which are still good teams, drop into the Europa League. And you need to what's the last time a Europa League team was not like I have to look it up, but it'll be hard for us to challenge in the league and also win the Europa League with the squad that we have. We could barely get through we could barely get through the league as it is with what we have. If you had added Europa League into this squad, we'd be finishing probably around where we finished before. So I can't see it. I can't see them winning it as the squad is at right now. Um, in regards to would I rather see our team in Champions League and bomb out early than win the Europa League? I'd rather see us in the Champions League, and if we bomb out, fall into the Europa League and try to win it. I think Arsenal just visually being in the Champions League changes the narrative around Arsenal. I much preferred Arsenal getting killed by Bayern Munich every year in the Champions League. I preferred that than Europa League semifinals getting killed by Villarreal, you know, or Baku. Being a Champions League team, no matter how bad you are in it, is much better than being a Europa League team that goes deep in the competition. And I just don't think this group has what it takes just yet to win a major European trophy. So I'd rather be in Champions League because you get the money as well. Um, so there you go. Um, so that was whether not fifth is progress. He on how confident he is of getting the resources needed. We're going to have certain resources, not unlimited resources, some resources. And with our resources, we have to play and do what we have to do in the best possible way. What does that even mean? We don't know what the rest are going to have in terms of resources, which I'm assuming is going to be challenging because of how it's not a top 3 or top 4 league. Now it's a top 8 or 10 teams that are involved. That's why we have to find a way to do again what we did last summer. We have to find a way. That doesn't sound very confident. Again, when we were in the driver's seat for Champions League and everybody was getting interviewed and Arteta was getting his new contract and everybody had their chest puffed out, it was, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to get 2 big signings, we're going to make sure that we do this and that, we're going to really challenge, blah, blah, blah. Now that we're not, we have certain resources, we're not sure what things are going to be like, it's going to be challenging. We have to find a way. I could have sworn you guys knew exactly what you were doing. Just a couple of weeks ago we know exactly what we need to do. We are prepared for the window. Now we need to find a way. I don't like the shift in narrative now that we're not in the driver's seat of Champions League because that window needs to be damn near the same. They need to find a way to create a Champions League level squad this summer. The assignment has not changed. So I don't know. And in regards to needing to do what we did last summer, we will need to do a version of that because we'll need to bring in at least 6 players. But the quality of the players has got to be better. It has to be. And I think that's also why we're targeting players that are better quality, but are within the last year or so of their contracts so that we can try to get them for less. But that just speaks to I think, notion that the Cronkies are somehow really backing Arteta and it's different this time. It's not freaking different. We should not be talking about certain resources and all this kind of stuff and having limitations and things like that. The Cronkies have talked a lot. Josh has talked a lot. Adu's talked a lot. Arteta's talked a lot. All season, they've been bumping gums about how things are different and how they need to get Arsenal back to where they want to be. And we're talking about resources again, Nothing has changed. They're going to give him 75 to 100 million, which doesn't go a long way in this market, and the rest of it will have to be made up with sales. And we know how Adu is with sales. That blurb right there was not cute. Like it just freaking wasn't. I'm sorry. And I read that, I just thought, "Oh, yeah. Cute." It's horrible. Blake says, "Just you know the Europa League anthem. I think it's the best anthem." Yes, I do know it. I've sang it on here before. I know it very well. Hakuna Matata says, "Look at Chelsea's games. Reese playing like Hazard these days." Petrum says, "Jess, it's all sound good tactics. No way you reach that close to top four to revert to the narrative we now hear." It's all, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Um, so yeah, hearing that and seeing that. Oh, by the way, there's like 140 of you guys in here, so like the video, subscribe to the channel. But hearing that doesn't fill me with the way it's changed so quickly from a couple of weeks ago is they were making I wouldn't be surprised if they were making plans based on Champions League and now they're not and then they're like, "Oh shit." That is not what I want to hear. Sorry. I want to hear that they're confident, they know exactly what they're doing. We're going to make sure that we up the level of the squad. We're going to bring in big players. We're going to do this or that because Steven Gerrard is not above saying that he's going to bring in big players and they're freaking mid-table. So what's Arsenal's excuse? Why do we pussyfoot around? Excuse my language, but we kind of tiptoe around things and we don't make bold statements, because we're afraid it's going to come back into our face. If we're confident in what we're doing, we'll make bold statements about what we're doing, regardless to where we finish. Let's see. He said, on how far we are from challenging. I thought this was interesting as well. On how far we are from challenging from the top four regularly. There I go back to what the league table is saying. The league table doesn't lie after 38 games, and the league table says that we are very far away still from the first and second positions, not only on points, but on goal difference. And that's the level we have to try to aim to reach. Is the question how far we are from challenging from the top four regularly? Like, I thought the question was more how far away are we from challenging for the top four more regularly? But that's a question that I'm more interested in. We know we're light years away from the top two. And so talking about it's such an easy answer to go, oh, well, from the top two, we're really far away. How far away are we from being a consistent top four team? That's what we need to be. Of course, you want to reach higher, but it's like, where are we in terms of trying to create a Champions League level squad? Because it's all good and well and fine. Everybody can say that we're all light years away from the top two. I need to know how far away we are from Chelsea. That's what I want to know. And how are you going to close that gap? That's what I'm more concerned about. He also talked about on the fans needing perspective if we miss out on Champions League. We tried to explain this, and we did try to explain things last year on what we were going to expect. And I think it's been very clear and obvious we are not where we should be as a club because this club's history tells us to be the best in the country, and we are not there. But we have to get there somehow, and that needs a journey, and that needs a certain amount of time and windows, as you are not able to do in one window what you want to do in four. That takes time. So at the beginning of the season, they were very reluctant to let us know what the goal was. So the idea that they explained anything to us is not true. They explained a lot about culture and making sure they get the fans on side and the connection between the fans and the team. And they explained that. Soft factors they explained and they spoke about a lot. But what Adu did, and he was point blank in front of the camera and would not give an answer in terms of where they felt like we should finish in this table. They avoided the table all completely. So it wasn't clear and obvious because we had huge conversations around what are their goals for the season. And I understand that it takes time and it takes windows and all this kind of stuff, but How long how long? Because this will be, in my opinion, Arteta's second big window of this particular project. And what I mean by that is the initial project failed. The first 1.5 year, the half year where we finished eighth and the full year where we finished eighth, that project failed. The project where he said he thought that Arsenal would be winning the Champions League in 3 years, that project failed. That project included some of the older players that we had in the team. It included David Luiz and Aubameyang with a new big contract, Thomas Partey. That is the project that failed miserably because finishing outside of the European spots meant that it wasn't gonna work, and then we also had to pivot away from because as Arsenal being outside of the Champions League for 5 years at that point, and compounded by the fact that you're not in Europe, meant that you cannot attract top players. So they needed to pivot, and then this is where Project Youth came about. That was the beginning of this particular project. There's a clear line between the 2 where the first one failed massively and then they turned around Project U so they could have a longer runway, and so they could have a couple of years to try to rebuild before people really had expectations. I think that's what we're looking at here. So he had a big window last summer. That was the first one. This will be the second one. How many windows will we not be able to score goals, not be able to get things over the line? Like I think that they need to have more, like they need to have higher expectations because I know it's going to take us a bunch of windows to get close to the top 2. But how many windows do you expect it to take before we qualify for Champions League through the league? That's what I need to know. And so that shouldn't take that much time if we're aggressive. Um, but there's definitely here some like it's going to take if they think it's going to take them 4 windows from now or like this one plus 2 more for us to start seeing something, they're not going to make it. We need to see something. Lynn says that has to be our next step because City and Liverpool are a million miles apart. However, all according to how much the owners put into Chelsea will be key to how close we could close the gap. Well, here's my the reality for me, Lynn, is that Leicester, like they had massive injuries this season. That's the reason why they're nowhere near the top 4. Um, but the last year and the year prior, they barely missed out on top 4. And they didn't buy big players. They didn't spend, you know, millions and millions and millions. They just recruited well. They don't have the clout that Arsenal have in the market or historically, and they were able to get close to get where we are now with what they have as their resources. So I do think that Arsenal, with the resources that we have and our historical advantage, should be able to do more than what Leicester could do in like 4 seasons. Um, they won a FA Cup and finished 5th twice or something like that. Um, so yeah, like I understand that Chelsea spends a lot of money, but Leicester were able to close the gap with what they have to their disposal, and we have more than them. So yeah, I do think that we need to think bigger. There should be a gap between us and Leicester, and we're doing basically what they did the season prior. It's not all just about spending money, it's about the manager that you have, the recruitment that you have to your disposal, how you use your resources, what you do on the pitch, how you set up your team, how you get them over the line. Those things matter more than just, like, Chelsea and them spend more money than us. Um, yeah, so Olivier says, "Top 4 next year and challenge for first the year after. Top 6, top 4, finally first if it works, great great plan." Um, Saida says, has a question, "Do you think we've slightly overpraised this young team? I heard on another pod that the average age of the 15, 16 squad Spurs squad was younger than our current one and they finished 3rd, you know, I I don't know, I think that, it's the age thing we really lean into because it gives us an out. I do think that it's relevant, but not as relevant as people are making it out to seem. I don't think the young players are what we need to focus on. I think it's what else do they have in that squad? What's the quality? In 2015-16, Spurs had a really good team. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, yeah, the age matters, but the talent matters more in my opinion. And so I think we have a talent issue at Arsenal. Um, we won't know yet. I think we'll know probably more next season around whether or not our young players are really talented or if they're just not as talented as we think. So I won't go as far to say we've praised them too much. But what I will say is that this is just a talent thing. The young player thing, it does kind of matter, but ultimately we didn't have enough talent in the squad, in general. I think that's more of an issue than their youth. I think it's a more of a relevant point than the youth. And understand why we keep saying it is because it's kind of like that comfy excuse that you can have to make you feel okay about what we did this season. At some point, they won't be young players anymore. So the proof will be in the pudding. But that 2015-16 Spurs squad was also very talented, and they had talented players in and around them. So our squad is not good enough, and I think we have a talent issue more than anything. But I do hear what you're saying. At some point, they won't be young players. Like next season, Odegaard's not a young player to me anymore. He'll be 24. He'll be 24 with enough experience and 1.5 years in the Premier League. I'm going to expect at least 10 goals and so like 10 assists next season minimum, and he'll have 4 competitions to get it done. Um, I'll expect, more goals from Bukayo Saka. I'll expect more. So I think it's it's a gray area now whether or not our young team um, is overrated or not and all that kind of stuff. But what's more alarming to me is just the squad is not good enough in general. So yeah. Let's see. Um, Scott Fleming, I'm just gonna go ahead and block you. You don't need to tell people to shut up. You're a fucking weirdo. Um, so Lewis Christie says that stat is wrong. 2015-16 Spurs squad had an average age of 25. Our current squad is 24.6. I think the young player thing, that'll all come out in the wash. That'll be less of a thing that you can lean on next season. Squad is not good enough, and that's why we didn't make it. There's also probably some inexperienced manager tax as well. I think Arteta did his he had culpability in us not getting into the top 4 this season in several games where he made mistakes. I'm more focused on Arteta and the squad not being good enough than the young players because we'll find that out later. Phil says, "Jess, do you think Arteta has improved our players?" This is a tough one because I do think sometimes naturally young players just get better over time. So, but I think I'm willing to say that I do think that he helped improve Bukayo Saka, um, especially going from left back to right wing. I think Thomas Partey has improved under Arteta, in terms of how he plays in that single pivot role. I think Xhaka has improved under Mikel Arteta. Um, the other ones is too hard to tell because some of them just came this season. So and a lot of them were out for large parts of the season, like Tomiyasu, can't really gauge that. Um, Largely, I think Ben White and Ramsdale and them kinda came in and were basically the same from start to finish. But I've seen improvement from Gabriel, um, Xhaka, Thomas Partey, and Saka that I feel like have something to do with Arteta. Um, so yeah, I do think he's improved some of our players. Philip, oh, I saw something. Philip says Arsenal has a player leadership problem. Talent is above average, not elite. We just yeah, we have a talent issue, and we have a couple of players that really carry this squad, you know? That's it. Lewis Christie says, "It sounds cliche, but we need some experienced players to help these boys with game management." And that's the thing, it's like, when you have players that are meant to be experienced, but don't have any experience at the top level, it's basically like not having it at all. And that I know that sounds very, very harsh, but the likes of El Neni, Lacazette to a certain extent as well, um, Holding. These guys, what are they gonna tell them? They haven't done anything. They haven't won anything big. They don't have it. And so when we talk about experienced players, we need to have players that have played in the Champions League before, have won trophies before, big ones, you know? And that's where I feel like somebody like Gabriel Jesus could be beneficial to Arsenal, because he has won big trophies. He has played in the Champions League, and so he knows what it's all about. Whereas just like being older doesn't necessarily mean you have the right type of experience to lead this young team forward. And with like Arteta, because he's so inexperienced, and I think this is what he kind of wanted from David Luiz and these guys, but it just didn't quite work out. He needs to find a happy medium between experience and not finished. You know what I mean? It can't be experienced players that are kind of finished and at the end. Kind of needs to be somewhere in between that's very difficult to find. But I think Gabriel Jesus fits that very well. It's just a matter of can we convince him to come and be a part of this project. Lynn says Conte has come in to Spurs and his platform was Kane and Son, which is a good start to bring in players to build around. But with Kane injury prone, playing more games, he will have a problem. I don't know because Spurs will buy more players, they'll buy more attackers, and maybe it won't be a big issue for them. Um, Arteta came in and there was Aubameyang. That's not a terrible platform. You know what I mean? So when Arteta came in, Aubameyang was like a Golden Boot winner. Um, so I hear it, like I really do. I hear it. Um, but Conte, the reason why Spurs are going to be in the top four most likely is because one, yes, they have elite players in the positions that really matter, and Conte is going to get them over the line because he has the experience to do so. Um, we had more than enough opportunities to win a game that would take us into the top 4, and we haven't done it. And in the most important week, Conte got a draw against Liverpool, a win against Arsenal in the derby, and a win against Burnley. In the week that mattered, Arteta got a win against Leeds, a loss against Spurs, and a loss against Newcastle. So, both of our games were away from home. I hear that, but like, I do think Conte makes a difference, and I don't feel like we should be afraid to say that. That Arteta, being a young, inexperienced manager, probably hurts us in some ways. All right, so um, this is on the development of the young players. Everybody I am happy with the development of our culture at the club, the development of our people and how they live their profession at the club and the connection. So again, we're talking very bland, gray, non-specific things. For somebody who's really specific, Arteta's very gray when in press conferences. You rarely it's like a riddle, you know? But, he says he's happy with mostly, like, the culture. We have everybody inside the organization, players, staff, ownership board, and obviously what is unquestionable is what you can see in the atmosphere at home and away with our fans, which people who have been here for 10 years say that they haven't lived that connection in this period. So I think that that's something to be extremely proud of, and that's credit to everybody involved with the club. Yeah, gray areas, culture, um, soft factor. Didn't really that on the development of your young players, I think it could have just been nice that, like, yeah, our young players have developed quite a bit and all this kinda stuff. He went into the connection and all that crap. That's cool, that's fine, but, like, also, do you see how quickly the connection between the fans and the players at Newcastle switched when they started winning games? Um, it's not that deep. Win games, and the fans are happier. They have a better connection with the club. The culture and the photo shoots and the interviews, all that is nice, but, like, ultimately, if you just win games, the fans will feel more connected to the club. That's just what it is. Um, win games, be successful, connection comes back. And you need more talent to do that. I think it all just comes back to talent, to be honest. Um, let's see. On if Everton being safe will help us. Well, playing the last game against a team that can be relegated, obviously mentally is very tough because you know the consequences of the profession, but they are your colleagues and nobody wants to be in that position. So you get a little bit of relief in that sense. Um, and so, yeah, basically with this, if they're safe, does that give us some sort of advantage? I don't think it necessarily does because it's all about how we play. You know, if we don't come out there and we act like, somebody did us dirty and, we're down on ourselves and, it won't matter. So I don't necessarily feel like them being safe or not really does anything for us because ultimately they can come out there, like I said, and play with no fear. And that can also be dangerous to us. So I wonder if he's done his job to get these players out of the dumps and get them out of their own ass and get them out there on that Emirates pitch in front of their fans that spend all that money to watch them play and to give them the type of last home day performance that they deserve. That's important to me. So it's more about what we do than what's going on with Everton. Because whether they're getting relegated or not, we should be able to beat Everton Football Club. They're not a better team than us. Um, let's see. Um, on whether he tried in the transfer window to bring players in. I don't know. Oh, I think the January window did come up here. Um, let's see. Okay, on how much will be available in the summer. It's not about that amount. If you see the wage bill that we have and we had, it's night and day. So it's not only about spending, it's about what you have sold. We have 28 players. We had 28 players and we ended up with 19 in the squad. So it's about the total expenditure because if not, that figure is irrelevant because what is a total annual cost of the squad building? Okay. So basically, getting rid of wages was important. Um, it's only important if you guys go out there and actually spend the money on quality players. It's all a moot point to me if you guys go out there and struggle in the market, which your earlier comments make me think that you may. Um, where is that comment about January? Um, I don't see it. Maybe it was on another interview, but oh, here, on if he regrets our approach in the January transfer window. He said no, and on whether we are in a better position because of it. Everything that we did do was trying to reach the objectives that we had after January, which was to try to be challenging for the top 4 and the way we were going to do it. Financially, be stable, and be in a position that come January or December, we could allow ourselves to do certain things and not be completely locked. All right. So essentially, we got the wage bill down so that in the summer we can be able to do the things that we want. Again, the risk that they took not doing anything in January, and if I mean, and even further weakening the squad, um, that risk did not necessarily pay off. So it needs to pay off this summer. So for me personally, I don't want to hear anything about how much we don't have the money, we need to sell players. I don't really wanna hear any of that. I'm not really interested in the window is difficult and It takes all the way up until the last week of the window to make any sort of signings. The risk that they took leaves the margin for, like, this kinda stuff really, really paper thin. And I think a lot of fans feel this way, that you risk not getting top 4, so we don't wanna hear any more excuses or anything like that. The wage bill is down. Before, when you guys were happy and talking about new contracts for Elneny and Arteta and all this kinda stuff, the narrative was we were gonna have a huge window, we knew exactly what we were gonna do, we were prepared, and we're going to do our thing. So I expect that to be the reality when the window opens. Um, on whether he tried in the transfer window to bring players in, yeah, if you get me 6 players, I'll go in the transfer window and bring these 6 players in the summer. As if we can do that, we have 25 players to select, the best 3 strikers in the world, bring them here, I will coach them, I'll be so happy to coach them. Yeah, I don't know if that was just being, like, kind of, flippant or what, but Arteta does that sometimes, like, where he gets frustrated with what people are asking him, and he just kinda whatever. And on whether not controlling games is to do with inexperience. It can be a lot of those factors. It could be a lot of factors. It's how we deal with the moments when we lose that control and we are able to reset and take the game in the direction that we want, and finding different ways to do that. It's down to that. It's not about the leadership of the team. It's about the understanding of certain situations in the game, not to continue to put the game into that mood. We are always working on it. So yeah, basically just a lot of, like, blah, 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 blahs at the end. But, yeah, for me, it's just more, they didn't even ask him about availability. You know what I mean? And I think that that speaks volumes, to what's going on, at the club right now. It's everybody I know it feels like we've blown it. It really has. I don't see any way to take it any other way. They spoke a lot about January windows, a lot of it, and I don't see much about availability. They usually, pick those ones out, who's gonna be available, who's not. I'm looking again, but I don't see it. Um, what we do know is that, Tomiyasu and Gabriel, Ben White, and Emile Smith Rowe didn't, really train, so they may or may not be available. At this point, what do you do? Like, we took a risk against Newcastle and probably played 3, you know, um, defenders that were had muscle injuries, and it didn't work out. So I don't know what they do against Everton, but the fact that nobody even asked about availability is pretty much all you need to know. It's done. You know? Yeah, they'll probably play Holding, Cedric, somebody that's injured, and, Tavares. Um, the midfield that we have available, which is Elneny, Granit Xhaka, Odegaard, and the front 3, and that'll just be it. So, how do you guys think the game is going to go? Are you guys hopeful that something will happen on this last day? Are you sitting there getting voodoo dolls of Son and Kane and sticking them? Like, what are you guys doing? Because, I have to say that I don't have any hope that it's gonna happen, and I think the game is going to be a forgettable game. I don't think they're gonna come out there and really give us a performance. I just have this weird feeling that they're not gonna be up for it, so it could go either way. Um, I feel very like I just wish we could have an end to a season that felt happy, somewhat, and you can't end the season with 3 losses, but I feel like we will, um, and that sucks. Um, so yeah, um, Yo-Yo says, hopeful Norwich win, otherwise I'm taking a break until, Arteta leaves." Ahmed says, "Arteta contradicted himself from what he said before the Spurs game. I mean, I pointed that out, that before the Spurs game, finishing 5th was a failure. And then after, now that we've lost those games, we've overachieved massively, but whatever. Lynn says, "Me personally, I think Norwich has nothing to lose and will come out and play with freedom." Um, P. Trim says, "We end like we began," which is really, really poor. Um, Nashville says, "I'm checked out of the season and only reading transfer stuff at this point." El Cast Alacastra says, "Conte would not allow a loss." Um, I mean, managers not allowing losses, I mean, I'm sure no manager wants to lose, and you can't really help it if your team loses. I think it's more just about, has does Arteta have, enough about him to get these boys out of the dumps? Stop feeling sorry for yourselves. You guys had so many opportunities to get 3 additional points, um, and you did it. You blew it. Stop feeling sorry for yourselves and perform for the fans. Like, the roller coaster that was Arsenal Football Club this season, the fans do deserve a good final game, and they cannot just go out there and feel sorry for themselves. I don't feel sorry for them. I don't, and I don't think the fans that go will either. Yo-Yo says, "Oh, yeah, you already said that." Zich says, "I can't have any hope that we will win our game," and that's the most important thing, is, like, I see a lot of people focusing in on Norwich. I mean, it would just be what it is if Norwich do win, but we can't beat Everton, you know? It's more about, can we win our games? We focused a lot about, well, what are the other teams doing? If we can't win our games, it doesn't matter, you know what I mean? Lynn says, "If Arteta doesn't get these quality players in, I think he will lose the fan base, and that could be between success or failure, and this would have been a complete waste if it happened." And I think that's a really good point, is that, like, we're at the do or die part of the Arteta tenure. Like, he may be saying that there's, and this is the bad part, is that the fans have a different timeline than the club, clearly. And so he's coming out talking about, it needs, we can't do what we want in one window that we wanna do in 4, and it takes all this time and all of this nonsense. But they have created the circumstances around them that will ultimately be the reason why they can't do what's required. You know, we were outside of European competition because of the decisions that they made. We are finishing in the Europa League because of the performances and the decisions that they had and made. So, I don't understand why we're giving more time if you're the reason why, you, Adu, and the board are the reason why we are where we are. They're not just coming in this season, it's been 2.5 seasons. So, you know, for me, it's like, this next season, nobody's gonna be trying to hear that it was a really difficult it was difficult games, and all the teams improved, and we improved, but they improved more, and so, this and that. Nobody's gonna be trying to hear that, like, because you had such a good opportunity this season to avoid that, and you didn't take it. So, yeah, I don't really think there's a lot more room for this. Obviously, I know that the feeling at the Arsenal games and with game going or match going fans is much different than the discourse online between Arsenal fans. But I do think we are in a period where nobody is going to really be sympathetic to a bad window and a bad start to next season, because we're meant to have been solved the foundational issues, the mentality issues, the culture issues, and now it's about getting the talent required to get us up the table. And you chose not to do something in January, so if you have worse players that you can pick from, that's on you. So you either need to coach them better, or have the type of recruitment that makes up the difference. Everything is in their hands. Nothing is out of their control. Um, you know, Yo-Yo says, "Per mentioned about 4 or 5-year plan on a podcast earlier this season. This process is the Arteta project. His feet are firmly under the table." I mean, a 4 or 5-year plan, I think for me, Yo-Yo is like, I can get behind, like, a 4 or 5-year plan to get us to where we wanna be, which is ultimately fighting for titles, makes sense because of where we are right now. But 4 or 5 seasons to qualify for the Champions League, have a Champions League level squad, and to be, winning trophies in general is not realistic. Um, we don't have a we don't have a single world-class player in our squad, or we don't, not right now. I mean, on Thomas Partey's day, he's probably as close as it gets, but to accrue that level of a squad that will get us to fighting titles, that will probably take 4 or 5 windows or years. But we need to see constant progression, and I think the reason why there's a lot of pushback on, whether or not Arteta is the right man or not is because from year to year to year, we don't see a lot of progression, and this is his first season with Project Youth, and the progression is still something that you have to squint to see. It seemed really clear in January when we were playing well, all the way up until March, but April and May completely shat on that. Um, it wasn't consistent good performances that you could see. There were games where we couldn't even pass the ball to each other. There are games where we just pulled our pants down and lost 5-0 for no reason, 3-0 for no reason. There were clusters of games where we just lost 2 or 3 on the bounce. So I think again, like, the progression needs to be something where people don't question it. And I think every season under Arteta, even though people have charts and graphs and statistics that say that we're progressing, there's not really a lot in the table that gives you that same feeling. Um, Again, can get behind a 4 or 5-year plan to get back to fighting for titles, but the way that this project is going, it's gonna take us 4 or 5 seasons to be a Champions League level team. That's not good enough. You know, when you see teams like Crystal Palace and, Newcastle who got new managers in, but you could see the way of play within 2 or 3 games. Why is it taken so long for Arteta's style of play to even be recognizable? Remember, at the beginning of this season, we still didn't know what our style of play is, and I still think there's a lot of people that don't know it now. So, if we're honest, um, you can tell me all day long that it's this and we build up into this and into that. In certain games, our style of play is not recognizable still. Amira asked, "Do you think that the club renewing Arteta's contract was also to try to relieve some pressure off of this team because we've at least secured Europa, forget about if it actually worked or not, though?" No, I think that they gave him a new contract because they're ultimately happy with him, and you know, the players that they probably were talking to or are talking to, and players that like Gabrielle and Saka that they clearly wanna give new contracts to, they know who the manager is gonna be, and, like, it's not up in the air. They did give it to him as soon as we qualified for Europa League, so he met the target. He met the target and got it. Um and so, yeah, I think that that was the goal and he got it, and so now they could go into the market and say, "We at least have European football, and Arteta is gonna be the manager for the next 3 seasons," and move that way. You never know, the players that they were talking to might have said, "Well, are you guys 100% on Arteta, or is he gonna go at the end of the season," or whatever, and there were also rumors, a couple of months ago around Edu trying to get Tite to be the new Arsenal manager. Those were reports coming from Brazil. So people read things, they hear things. So, now people know that Arteta is the guy that we're going with. Um, let's see. Chris Leary says, "When did they introduce the Champions League teams dropping to Europa rule? I don't remember doing so yet." Absolutely whooped always in the last 16, even against Monaco and Dortmund. I mean, I think that was this the first season of them dropping into the Europa League? It might have been. Let's see. Lone Star says the renewal of Arteta's contract was designated to demonstrate intent for new signings. Yeah, exactly. It's like it's no more than that. Like again, I don't think that when people say it's a 3-year contract, so we're stuck with Arteta for 3 more seasons. How many managers have you seen get a new contract and get sacked the season right after? It's not the same as signing players. It's completely different. And so I do hope they have a contingency plan if it doesn't go the way that we thought it was gonna go with Arteta next season, because my prediction for next season is gonna be very, very difficult for him to get top 4 through the league. I don't think he's gonna be able to do it because it's just gonna be too hard, with multiple competitions, so and that has to be the goal for next season. I mean, and I'll ask you guys, there's 150 of you guys here, so make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Is your expectation for next season to get top 4 through the league or win the Europa League? Or do you think that Europa League qualification again is okay for this group? Like, let's pretend that we get 6 new players, we get the strikers, we get this and that. What what is the bare minimum? Because if it's not get into the Champions League after being in Europa League was clearly the goal for the season, then what is progression? You know, what is progression? And they have to back what they do enough to be able to say that we should be getting Champions League. You know, if we have guys at the helm that don't believe what they can do from now until the beginning of next season is good enough to get us in the Champions League, they need to get out now. Like, you know what I mean? Let's see. Yo-Yo says Arteta's Atletico semis was the first season. Um, let's see. Chris says 3rd place, yes. Martin says, just joined the stream, so forgive me if it's been covered, but if the bag is big enough, will you let Saliba go?" Um, I mean, I wouldn't sell him for anything less than 40 million because we bought him for 30, and now he's the best French center back in, I would do like what everybody else does. He's was in the League One Team of the Year, constant Marseille Player of the Week or of the month or whatever of the game, whatever. He's a senior member of the French national team. So I would not sell him for anything less than 40 million because that's how people would charge us for a player, um, even if he has 2 years left. The issue is that, like, we're never gonna get 40 million for him because we don't have the minerals as a club to get good money for our players because we let them run their deals down, and we treat them like crap. They won't sign new deals for us just so that we can keep the value high. So for me, if he doesn't get a new deal, I would sell him because we can't lose him for free, but I don't want to sell him. I want him to come back to Arsenal. I think it's a huge mistake to let him go, um, especially because 'cause you're gonna have to spend whatever you get from his sale and to bring in another center back that's good enough to play for Arsenal. So, yeah, I mean, I would sell him if we don't give him a new deal or he doesn't sign the one that maybe we offer him. Let's see. Sitch says, "I thought 3rd from the group gets Europa." I think they do. Craze says, "Rather win Europa." Chris says, yes, when we played Atletico. Let's see. Craze says, "Trophy over top 4." Jahar says, "Europa League win and top 5." I think it's so hard to win the Europa League, even with we've had teams that were good enough to win it, and we still haven't won it. And we've been in a semifinal, knocked out of the round of 32 by Olympiacos, and, in a final. So, I don't know what could be. I think we were a good enough team throughout the season. Like, okay, here I think it might be I think it'd be easier to qualify for the Champions League through the league than to win Europa, and the reason why is because I think that, like, being in a knockout competition obviously gives that opportunity for something bad to happen against you, and then boom, you're out of the competition. But through the league, for a long period of time, we're getting the type of points and the type of results against the lower half of the league that put us in that position. What we didn't have was the ability to nick points off of the big teams. And then at the end of the season, when we played Southampton, Brighton, and Crystal Palace, which we should have at least gotten 6 points from those, we fell apart. So for me, it's like if you could get good players that can help you nick a couple of points off of the top teams and kind of be the type of team that we were all the way up until March, which was being able to get the 3 points off of the bottom teams consistently, then I think that's actually easier than trying to win the Europa League. I just don't think we have what it takes. Like, I just don't. Look at there's better teams in the Europa League this season, and they couldn't get through it and still compete in their league. Dublin says the Champions League drop down to Europa has existed as long as the Europa League has existed, as far as I'm aware. I don't even remember you guys. And Ketia's phone bill says fourth minimum if we get significant upgrades. Um, Zich says we need to get top four or win the Europa League next season. Anything below that is unacceptable. Lewis Christie says top four, but I will accept UCL qualification from winning the Europa. Lone Star Londoner says 8 new signings is the immediate goal over the course of next season and releasing players that need to move on. I mean, we definitely need like 8 new signings, but I think they'll fall short and only get 5. Edu is not capable of doing things quickly, and getting deals done, and we'll see if they can get they should get deals done quickly because they said they know exactly what they're doing. They have everything under control. January was so that we could do things in the summer, so I expect things to be done quickly. Um, Tony says 70 points. I mean, we're on what, like mid-60s, so 70 points. I think we need to probably be in the mid-70s next season, but I hear what you're saying. Martin says top 4 and a trophy will do. I don't know if people see how hard that's actually gonna be still. Um, Lone Star says Bill Saliba is staying. I hope so. Garfield says, "Sack the manager now before we start next season so we can get a manager. What gets us back in the Champions League?" What I will say about the Saliba situation is that even if he wants to go, if Arteta has anything about him, he'll put his arm around him, bring him back, and treat him in a way and give him the playing time required and show the, um, I guess, show the ambition required for him mid-season to sign a new deal. It happens. There's players that wanna leave all the time, like Rudiger, I know he wanted to leave, Chelsea before when Frank Lampard was there. Thomas Tuchel came in, and then he played well under him. It can happen. If Arteta can just maybe just I hate to it's a bad word to say, but just kinda humble yourself a little bit and just instead of just saying, "Well, get him out," tell him to come back, treat him good, give him playing time, and then offer him a new deal when he's feeling good about Arsenal then. You know, like, it doesn't always have to be just, "Well, get out." Yo-Yo says, "Unai fought on 2 fronts in his first season as head coach with little to say on the squad. If Arteta finishes 5th, then I expect Arteta to get 4th and the Europa." Um, that's, like, impossible. Blake says, for Arteta, I think. Blake says, "If you back Arteta, then you should get top 4 with the money and experienced players that was brought in. But with Arteta's inexperience as a manager, battling out with Conte and et cetera won't happen." Um, Lynn says, "For me, Arteta has to be able to buy the quality players so we can get at least to the final." Here's the thing about all this, like, Arteta needs to be backed and all this kinda stuff. Arteta is actively making decisions on transfers, on players that are shooting himself in the foot. Like, the idea that Adu said, "I'm getting rid of Aubameyang, I'm getting rid of this player," that Arteta had a lot to do with that as well, like, he made some of these decisions too. So, for me, it's like, y'all said when they gave Arteta the new contract and they were all sitting there and it was a sunny day at the Emirates, they sat there boldly and said, "We're gonna bring in 2 top players, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, we're confident." Now he's turning around and saying what they did in January was so that we could have a big summer. So, regardless of what happens in this summer window, the decisions that you made, if they prevent you from getting those top players, that is still on you. So you need to figure out how with less good players, with maybe good players instead of elite players, how you're going to make sure that you make it into the top 4. You can't make decisions that hurt your ability to be more competitive and then have the excuse of, "Well, I didn't get what I wanted." Well, the reason why you didn't get what you wanted in the summer was because you weren't good enough the season prior and you made certain decisions. Regardless of what happens in the summer, he needs to get top 4. He needs to qualify for the Champions League. Let's just say that. So, Tony says Liverpool's top 3 center backs have all had 2,000 minutes this season. We have minutes to share. Saliba stays. Yeah, they just have to not sell him. They just have to not sell him and not buckle and just say, "You're an Arsenal player and you'll play for us." Give him the minutes and it'll be fine, and you offer him a new contract then. Chris says, "Not looking forward to those Monday fixtures. What is it about them that sucks the most? Maybe the pressure of playing last." Yeah, I mean, that's basically I think what it is everybody's watching you, the lights are on you. I mean, it's not normal that we don't win the Monday night games. And when we don't win them, it's not like we crumble on Monday night. It's not just like, we just didn't play, we didn't get one like, we just literally crumble on Monday nights. Um, when we lose a game, we tend to lose 2 or 3 on the bounce. Those things have got to be addressed, you know? So yeah. Chris says Saliba will also want to playing insurances, particularly pre-autumn. He has been picked ahead of Upamecano for the Nations League fixtures. What I'll say is like you need to give like Konate was given Champions League, so he played like most of those Champions League games all the way up until the end. um, Arteta would have to promise him Europa League, FA Cup, and Carabao Cup games. You can't play White and Gabriel every single week and have Saliba sitting on your bench. It just he has to you have to concede a little bit to get like you can't just be so like I'm just going to treat you like crap and then you should just give me what I want. You have to give a little bit. And I think there's nothing wrong with giving Saliba a little bit, giving him the Europa League, you know, and those games might be better for him anyway because, you know, he's he will have played in Europe for so long that, like, having that extra, couple of minutes or whatever, a couple of seconds on the ball will probably help him so he can get used to playing, and then he can build his way up to the Premier League. Um, let's see. Um, Pap says, "Jess, I don't think it's just about humble yourself, it's about respect. If they don't respect the manager, they have to go." I mean, but we've done that already. We've done if you don't respect Arteta, you have to go, and we haven't seen much for it. You know what I mean? We haven't seen much for it. So, like, I get what you're saying about if they don't respect the manager, they have to go. But equally, like, he can't hit every nail with a hammer. Sometimes you need to manage players differently. And it seems like the more talented players that are kind of on the fence about him or Arsenal get hammered harder. Like they just boom, and you can't say that Aubameyang, Ozil, Guendouzi, and Saliba aren't more talented than some of the players that he's kept. You know, I don't know if they're just all bad apples or whatever, but like I don't think you had to just like boom with all of them, if that makes sense. But I get what you're saying. They do need to respect the manager, but sometimes don't you have to earn their respect too? George says we have seen going from eighth to fifth. That's what we've seen. I get what you guys are saying about 8th to 5th, and on paper, we can just kinda take that and say that that's what it is and the table doesn't lie. We know we got a lot of help from our rivals. They probably won't be as bad as we thought, as they've been this season. And so, yeah, we have improved, but we've kinda scored the same amount of goals, like, we have improved, but it's been marginal in my opinion. Um, Tony says, "Number 1 for me is Arteta losing the newbie naive manager decisions, smarter transfers, smarter subs, smarter and pragmatic tactics when required. Next season is about Europa League wins and Premier League point accumulation." I think that's really key. And obviously in the next couple of weeks we'll do a lot of like reviewing the season, reviewing the players, reviewing Arteta. But one thing that I think killed him this season was not being more pragmatic in games where we didn't have our starting 11, our best 11, or we were in a scenario where if we didn't bunker in a little bit more and just kind of be a little bit more like, okay, we're not as good, we're away from home. He didn't play back threes. He didn't try to keep it tight. He didn't try to keep us in the game. It was, we're going to play our way. And we even decided to play our way without players that if you don't have them, you actually can't play your way. Not having Thomas Partey, like playing 2 games with Sambi Lakanga as a single pivot was a mistake. Like, it just was. Um, and so sometimes when you're weakened, you have to give your team a security blanket, and I think he exposed them in some games, especially during this stretch. Those are that could have been the difference between top 4 and not. Um, so yeah, we have improved. It's been, I think, not marginal, but definitely not as the amount of losses and the lack of goals. I think those are the main things for me. It's been more marginal, but we have improved, just not as much as I think we hyped the team to be. But yeah, last but not least, score predictions for the game. I know we haven't really talked much about it, but I think that's just a symptom of feeling like kind of down about the season and how it's ended. So let's do some quick score predictions and let's do score predictions plus where we finish. So I'll drop mine in the chat first, and then you guys can follow suit because there's 155 of you guys watching. So I'm gonna say, 1 more and oh, yeah, that's my prediction is that we'll draw the game 1-1 and we'll finish 5th. So I wanna know what you guys think, so go ahead and get your predictions out there. Right, let's see. Mackie says 2-1 to the Arsenal, finishing 5th. Um, let's see. Alacastra says 3-1, um, in 5th. Blake says 3-2 to the Arsenal. Yusuf says, Adu is so naive and inexperienced. Tony says, do we know if we will have our center backs? Nope, nobody even asked about um, injuries during the press conference. So, no, I don't know what's going on. We know we'll have Holding, and he'll probably play. 2020, 2021, 5 points off 4th place Chelsea. Tony says I'm late. Lone Star says 2-1 Arsenal 5th. Dublin says 2-0 to the Arsenal, but it won't matter 5th. Martin says we lose 1-0 and Norwich beat Spurs. That is the worst case scenario. Sin says 0-3 Lampard will finish 5th. Okay. Sol says 2-0 to the Arsenal. Captain Joker says 3-1, finish 4th. Okay. Yusuf says 2-1 to the Arsenal, finish 5th. Zich says 2-0 to Everton, finish 5th. Kiro says 2-0 to the Arsenal. Lewis says 1-1, 5th. Name Block says, I don't know, where shambles. Kiki says, I said Kiki. Kikoletso says 1-1, 5th. Chris says 4-0 to the Arsenal. Spurs lose 1-0. We finish 4th. Yo-Yo says 2-1, 4th. History of the Tottenham. I wish. Petrim says 1-0 to Everton. Cray says 3-0 win and 5th. Everton and safe. We have no pressure on us. No pressure FC. Tony 3-1. Everton are literally hungover. Colin says 0-3 Everton. Arteta binned before the 90th is up. That's not happening. Garfield says 2-0. Arsenal finish 5th. Hap says, Jess, I think Arteta said that when he can to the club, Abba was his biggest supporter and vice versa until whatever happened. Ozil was bad with Wenger, Unai, and Arteta. So bad egg. Ify 0-0 finish 5th. George's opinion says every time I hear 5th, I think of the Chappelle skit. Pap says 1-0 Arsenal. Arsenal, Arsenal. Lewis Christie says it's actually these these this is the history of the Tottenham. Okay, gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. All right, you guys. So a lot of people saying fifth, some people hopeful that we'll finish fourth. Either way, the season will be done and we can start talking transfers. Again, I will have a transfer expert on um, weekly to talk about what's going on with Arsenal and transfers. I'll be on daily. I'm working on some really interesting new projects with Sophie from the Highbury Squad. We're working on putting together a show with just us two on both of our channels. So look forward to that, and also probably a monthly show with Deluded Gooner. So I have a lot of stuff cooking for you guys next season and over the summer. So make sure you guys are subscribed, like the video, subscribe to the channel, all those types of things. And I will see you guys after the Everton game. Bye, guys.